Kia ora everybody, you're tuning into Dr. Burst from Tamaki Makaurau in Aotearoa. For those tuning in for the first time, the Pavilion project is a wooden structure located in Henderson, Auckland, and every 2 months it gets repainted by a different artist with a new design. The structure itself was designed by students from Unitec in the School of Architecture and funded by Eke Panuku Development. In this month's iteration of the Pavilion, we have a Calgary, Canada-born artist whose roots originate from the Cook Islands, Numa MacKenzie. Dabbler of many practices, but you will have likely seen his large-scale murals throughout Tamaki and quite possibly participated in one of his printmaking workshops out at Corbin's estate. So without further delay, Numa, could you please introduce yourself and let us know where you come from?
Kia ora ana koutou katoa toa. Ko Numa Tini tōku ingoa. My name is Numa MacKenzie. I go by Numa for short, but my full name is Numa Tini Te Pūtahi Fraser MacKenzie, as was given to me by my great aunt back home. I was born in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Moved to the States from my childhood, and then I think when I was 9, we moved back to Calgary, and then I grew up there through my teens into young adulthood, and then ended up moving back to the Cook Islands when I was 30, and then met my future wife and moved here. And so my upbringing was, just like not a white kid in a predominantly white community. And you find your people through, your love of music and stuff. So, my brother was in the 80s. He was doing the breakdancing and all that stuff. So I was definitely watching that first wave. And then by the time I hit high school, then that second wave came in. And that was probably one that we're more familiar with. The music videos were coming out and all that. And we were being represented. So we were, kind of reflecting off that first wave. And, and you're finding, that's the thing when you're not the jock and you're not the sports guy and stuff. And, you're getting into the skateboarding and the 4 elements of hip hop and rave culture. That was a big part of it for me as well. So,
what was schooling like for you? Yeah,
it was, I realize now, in an adult, you look back and you go, I was not treated well, right off the bat. I actually reflected back recently I remember the first day of kindergarten, and the teacher kind of was like, you're not going to be good at school, because I wasn't good it was my first day. I wasn't listening. I didn't know what the routine was or anything like that. And, you look back and you go, gee, that kind of set a precedence for me, because I really didn't think of myself as scholastically or smart or any of that until you get older, and then you realize, wait, I have what it takes to do things. And I wasn't mainstream in any sense of the word, we were in predominantly white neighborhoods, and I was a different kid, and I was always artistic, and that was the thing. I always felt like that was where your family supports you when you're doing your little drawings, and you're like, yeah, I can draw, so that was always stuck with me. And so going up through elementary and junior high school, which is what we call it in North America, and just kind of doing, best things I was doing was phys ed and art class, basically.
That's a really great combo together, and I guess in such a westernized learning environment at that time, did you have much cultural connection to your roots in the Cook Islands? Like, was there even an opportunity to express yourself in places like that school?
A little bit, like in America, it was a lot more, like we were always proud to be where we were from, but because of the distance, I only heard my mom speak Dareo when she was on the phone with like a loved one or something. So she was of that generation that, it's not something you kind of bring forward, but of course she was super proud. She owned a business which was travel agencies, so she actually used to sell trips to the Cook Islands, and that was kind of her niche, I think, when I was young, before everything changed, because we actually moved back to Canada from the States because the economics in the 80s, everybody lost everything, and we were part of that. We lost our businesses and our home, and we ended up shifting back to Canada because what took us over there in the first place was my dad worked in oil and gas. So that was the link. You know, my dad's actually English, my mother is Cook Island Maori, and they met and traveled the world, and they followed that industry, and it took them to places like Spain and Algeria and Bolivia, and then they were settling into North America. I think as probably political environments were getting hotter and they couldn't kind of just live their way, so they came back to North America. And so, yeah, we were proud in that sense, you know, like I knew my mom made sure I could dance but it was a real, like, still a distant thing. It wasn't like a strong knowing. And so trying to understand my culture. But every few years my parents we'd either go back or, so coming on this side of the world was great. You know, I loved, when I was young, going home was really good, but then as I got older, I'd get sent back, and then I was kind of ostracized because I wasn't, you know, like I couldn't speak the language. When you're young, you're cute and all the kids like you and the aunties love you. But then when you come back and you're older and you're like, you're useless, you know, because you don't know what to do. You don't know how to listen like everyone else knows how to listen. And we weren't churchy either.
And maybe just before we step into the story of you returning home to the motherland, when you were in secondary school in Calgary, did you already have the intention of being an artist?
That was definitely what I wanted to be. I had no idea what it was going to look like. It was always that, you know, I think we all grew up in a similar thing, like there's no career in it and this and that. There was like a graffiti competition. Like I was doing graffiti, I was tagging, I was doing all that stuff. And but we didn't, you know, we were all, subway art was the Bible. We were all trying to emulate all that stuff, you know. So I was tagging hard out at first. There was a period of time I had like every bus in my city of running, you know. I was probably.
What did you write?
My first tag was days, and then subway art came out and be like, oh, you can't copy, you know, you can't be that, and so you switched it up, and then I ended up going to Maverick or Mavo, is shortening it down, or just Mav. So that was it was breakdancing. I was big into that.
Were you part of any crews?
Like some local stuff, just us doing our thing. You know, and you get a few friends together and you run and you do your thing, and you're getting out there.
Was there much graffiti at that time?
No, like the first piece I painted was like right out in the open in front of everybody with people walking by, because it was so new. Nobody reacted negatively to it, you know, but within a year that was, you know, so it just blossomed, and of course that's when everybody turned around and it was like the scourge of the earth and stuff. Yeah, exactly. You know.
So you've got roots in graph and you're showing lots of promise with the art. Could you tell me a little bit about your journey with art after school?
Okay, so I was definitely like into all that kind of urban culture. You know, like I said, raves were a big thing, you know, before clubs started kicking off, and breaking. But all that was like, it was the social aspect of it. That's what I loved about it, is being out, crew, people, being part of something. Yeah, community, right? Like all the weirdos, all the, and like, you know, like what was cool about it is that the people that were into it, you connected across town. You know, like you could be friends with people on the other side of town, where, you know, everybody's super cliquey and protective of their hood or their crew and that, but graffiti broke all that, you know, or the dance scene broke all that. You got to hang out and be jamming with people from the other side of town, so it made you into a bigger circle. And because you maybe not fit into the circle that you did at school, or the circle, where all of a sudden you could be doing your own thing and meeting up with people, doing your own kind of, just all that kind of different stuff. And then, but after high school, after a bit of that time, I actually stepped away from doing art, and I made a conscious decision to switch it into, like, I started doing capoeira. Yeah, so I did that for 6 years, and so that took that was my creative end, and I was drawing like that kind of stuff, but it was mostly I was doing it with my body, because it was also that I was trying to get out of the kind of rave and party scene. So I was like, this is a healthier atmosphere for me, It could still go out dancing, but and like it was getting violent in the graph scene, like, people getting more territorial, and it was like, that's not what it was about. So stepping back from it a bit and then returning back to it once. Capoeira, it's a Brazilian martial art. Yeah, it's a Brazilian martial art. So it's kind of like a fight, a dance, and a game all at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of, it's a lot of movement. It is the B-boy circle, but 400 years back. So it's like, instead of having a boombox, you had the instruments, you're singing songs. And so it was this thing of really getting into the culture, and it made me reflect on what I was doing and what I thought was like, oh, this is my whole world, graffiti, the theme, all that kind of stuff. And then you see that, oh, this is like an ancient culture that's means a lot more, and you're in the moment, when you're doing it. You're not focusing about anything else.
How did you get into capoeira?
Oh, because I was a breaker. Like a school approached me, and they were like, so a couple guys that I knew, and he was like, hey, you should try this out, because he was doing it, and because they were looking for new students. And so I was like, okay, and I met there who became our master, and mestre, and he was like, yeah, give it a go. And so they were starting a new school in my city, and I was like, okay, I'll come along, and it was like, okay, this is a healthy space for me, like, because it's not all about getting wasted, it's not all about the party, but I could still dabble in that when I wanted to, but it made me have a healthy routine of like exercise.
In terms of the martial arts, what was it about that particular sport that got you involved?
Same thing, it's that social connection that's always meant a lot to me. Because I was like the last born in my family. When we moved to Canada, we moved from a street that was like full of kids, and then we moved into a neighborhood that was like mostly old people. So you don't have your community, I went from in America when we were living there, like, so everybody knew my brother and my sister. So you kind of have this lineage in your neighborhood where everyone's like, oh, you're blah blah blah, and then you move somewhere and no one knows you, and you're kind of at the bottom of the heap, and people are picking on you, and you got a different name, and you don't fit in, and then so it's this social bonds, and at first I was like, oh yeah, it was really, all that stuff's based around your ego and what you can do, which you don't realize when you're younger, and then pushing myself, and then you start getting good, and then you start enjoying it, and then you're really feeling it, and you're going, wow, this is. But I was kind of taking on this persona, like, I was always exotic, but here a lot more people thought I was actually Brazilian and stuff, and you're being part of that, but you're all emulating, just like we're emulating people in New York to be all that kind of stuff, and then emulating all this, and then 9/11 happened. And my parents got freaked out, and they're like, why don't you move home? Why don't you move back to the Cooks? They were moving back. They were retired. My dad, semi-retired. My dad was coming up and working seasonal work to keep things going. And I was like, yeah, I'll ship back for a year. And I was pretty ignorant about that. I was thinking, oh, this is going to be like a working holiday. I'm just going to have fun. And I kind of went home, and I was even like trying to do capoeira there, and I looking back at it, I'm like, I pretty much fell on my face when I got there, because the dynamic changed. I was working, I had a job in a bar, I was making really good money, so I was kind of like, I was just living my life. I was living it really well. I wasn't saving anything, but I was comfortable and I was safe. And then I went home, and like, it's like $6 an hour, and people don't really care about your individuality and your difference, and you don't know how to fit in. I look at the islands, it's like a small town you can't drive out of, for when you're not used to that kind of thing. So it was a huge shift. And then after that year, I moved back I was like, I'm going back, because I'm like, I'm not fitting in here. But in that year in the Cooks is when I really like saw my culture. Okay, I don't know how to really reach it right now, but now I'm actually, it was that thing of falling in love with Brazilian culture, and then going home and going, oh, I've got my culture. And then that's when I learned about like things like voyaging and tattoo history, you know, but it was really a distance. So when I went back to Canada, the library was my friend, because it was like, okay, I'll go read about our history, basically, of us being found and all that kind of stuff. So that was the beginning of my links to the arts and my culture.
I recall that at some point you went back to the Cook Islands, but you spent a little bit longer than a year there, right?
After that 1 year, after 9/11, then I shifted back. I had another partner. You know, I went home and I had a partner, and I really wanted to return to the Cooks. I wanted we had a child, and it was like, oh, you know what? I would like them in my culture, and that same thing of missing home and feeling really disconnected. And, you know, and all those things, as you start getting older, it means more, and you're going, oh man, I need my family. I want this, you know, and I was kind of hungry for it. That was the direction I want to move in. So we moved there, and that all fell over miserably, as relationships do. And but once we split, that kind of freed me up, and then I was just like, okay, this is the direction. And then also in that time, I met, I'd caught up with some friends and made connections, and I was helping stretch for a friend of mine, Croc, and his Wahine Annie O'Neill, who I'd met in a previous trip in that year that I came forward. So that was how we kind of reconnected. She was like, oh, you remember me? And so, oh, my husband needs a stretcher. Would you be interested in that? And I was like, yeah. So when you do traditional tattoo in the Pacific, you need someone to be your actual stretcher. Yeah. So and I was just like, yes, like this is a direction that aligns with what I'm interested in, you know, because before that, the Cook Islands is, you know, they're very proud of their the religion and that, but that was not how I was raised, and I didn't feel that connection. And so I was really interested in my ancestors, and I was like, okay, this is a link to my ancestors in a sense, and it's art. And so I was really keen on that. So started off with that, and then once that relationship ended, and then I was like, Annie and Croc had like a little market stall at the Saturday markets, and so I was making little artworks and putting in there, and it was selling, and I was like super stoked, and you know, they were being super supportive of me in that sense. And just kicking off from there.
And while we're on that topic of your first child, what was the mindset of becoming a father like at that time?
Oh, the dad stuff's the best part, you know. But yeah, it's just like, you know, you're getting in that survival mode, like you gotta make money, gotta provide, gotta do this, gotta do that. But being a dad is, it's if that's what you want, it's amazing, you know. And I was never afraid of that stuff.
That's awesome, man. So moving on from there, you dabbled with your art in the markets, but at some point you met your partner, which is quite important to your story because she played a role in getting you over here to Aotearoa.
This is a funny story. I worked at the airport, and she was coming to stay with a friend who I knew on the island and considered friends as well. And so we're standing together, and she walks out, and I'm like, oh, who's that? It's like, is that your friend? And he's like, yeah. And so I was like, oh, cool. So we chatted, and then I bumped into her again, and then again, and we just, and then realizing that we had mutual friends, and I realized, oh, okay, this is like I'm gonna know this person probably continually. So, you know, I was being mindful of that, you know, being respectful, I hope. Well, looking at the outcome that I was, and then we just hit it off, and she was just supportive of me right from the beginning in regards to my interest.
That's awesome, man. And how did she convince you to come over?
She basically said, hey, come visit me. You know, we hung out for that week. She was in Raro, and she said, why don't you come over here? And I was a bit freaked out, to be honest, because, it was just like doing my thing, hanging out with tourists, that kind of thing.
But had you been to Aotearoa before that?
No, I'd been as a child. I visited a few years earlier. I kind of came through because I that was the thing before I met my partner. That earlier one, I came back to Raro. I came to Aotearoa. I came for a visit to just kind of suss it out and see, oh, can I fit into this place? I even knew there was kapora, so I was like, oh, maybe I could join a kapora group here. I was astonished by the graffiti scene here, and I was really actually like just shocked and impressed because that's when the city was crushed. And even when I was in Canada, I was living in Vancouver last. I found Askew's blog, and I was reading his blog, and it was tripping me out hard out because I was reading and I was going, oh god, it's like this guy lived down the street from me, you know. It just blew my mind that you guys were doing the exact same thing as we were doing, but in your own way. And you know, it just gives you that idea of, oh, this is a bigger thing, you know, because you get caught in your neighborhood, and you know, we're copying all those people in New York and in LA, and then but you see these guys, oh, he's killing it over here. Got a few of the magazines, you know, the local rags that you guys were making over here, and being really impressed by it. So I was like, oh, maybe this is a scene for me. So going back, she says, hey, come over. It's right at like World Cup time, Rugby World Cup in 2011. And so I come over, I'm a little shell-shocked, and got to meet her family. And she's Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei, and just going up on the land and learning the history of them fighting to protect the land, and just being like really in awe of all that, you know, because I'd come over and I was kind of like, oh, maybe I'll meet some Māori people, but I didn't. When you don't know how to connect, you don't know how to connect, you know. Like, I think a lot of people would like to do things like that, they just don't know how to do it. And when you're in the kind of the tourism groove, they're just channeling you through to make money and stuff like that. Visiting a few friends, that kind of stuff that I'd made in the cooks. And yeah, so yeah, she brought me over, and we hit it off. She'd come over to visit again. Yeah, so I've got 2 kids, we're married, all settled in, you know. Like, I'm not looking back, you know. I haven't been back to Canada. I really did want to move away from that world. Not the people in it. I loved a lot of the people, but the culture, and you know, it is getting tighter, and it is getting harder for people over there. But I was just like, wow, this is the direction I want to go into. Here's my culture. It's right on my doorstep.
And after all this time, do you feel that you fit in here now? Yeah.
When people see me, they're like, yeah, you're supposed to be here, you know. But when they hear me speak, then they're like, oh, wait, where are you from? You know, a lot of people think I'm Hawaiian and stuff like that, which is flattering. But a lot of people go, wow, but you look Māori, and I'm like, well, because we are, you know, we're just Kokala Māori. We're all from the same gene pool.
That's awesome, man. And after being here for 11 years and pursuing this kind of like artistic path, did you step into the role of full-time artist straight away?
No, I was really like trying to find my place, and it was refreshing to come here and see, oh, there's a good art scene, like a good street art scene, you know, like there's art, public art, there's street art, there's graffiti, it's happening here. Yeah, it was like, it's just not like ugly and buffed everywhere, even though they keep trying to. But it was just like, wow, there's a community here, and I'm stoked to like figure it out and trying to find people, and so I was just really, I think you know where the Countdown is in Grey Lynn, you know, and that used to be an empty lot that was just bombed out. Yeah, the big swimming pool and the outside walls, and everybody was, you know, it was living wall. It was happening, and you know, I got up on that wall with like a little crappy painting, you know, like I was getting back to basically spray paint, like, because I hadn't really touched it much since Canada. I wasn't that great, you know. I don't think when you come in contact with real people that have been committed like yourselves, and most of the TMD guys that, you know, because they are the most visual, like publicly, I guess you could say, you could go and see guys paint and catch them getting up, and you're like, man, the fucking talent is here. And it was really awe-inspiring. So it was like, oh, I want to do this. So I'll just go get some paint and they'll start painting up here, and so I didn't really know anybody, but slowly painting, and then moved out west. I was staying with my wife and her family until she got pregnant, and then we got our own place in Kelston, and then so I was living on that side of town, and then I went to an open days at Corbin's Arts Estate, and I was like, okay, I want to be a part of this, whatever this place is. I want a studio here, and so I was quite grateful for that, and I was just I want a space here because I need to build community. So, and that really kicked me off and kind of gave me a bit of direction, and and going to the museums, meeting people through the art scene, go to openings, and just slowly chipping away at it.
I mean, Corbin's is an incredible place with a hub of creativity. There's obviously a really broad range of practitioners who have studios out there, and I guess my question to you is, being a part of that community, what are some of the types of relationships that have been formed over that time you've been there?
Absolutely, yeah. So that was it. It was just like, here's a doorway into all people. There's only a few marble carvers in Aotearoa, and 2 of them are based at Corbin. So there's stone carvers, there's painters and sculpture and all kinds of people doing all kinds of different stuff, and so it's just refreshing to go, okay, I'm in an art space. This is where I want to be.
And do you think that being in that type of creative environment has influenced your art in any way?
Yeah, definitely. And just being here in Aotearoa and being with my wife and her family and community, and just understanding, I didn't grow up with community. When you're a young adult, a community is like going to the bar. It's like going to a party, and I've got great friends from that time and stuff. But when you're starting to settle into your community, and what the idea of community is in a Polynesian context is way different. That means you're not just taking from it. Right? You have to give back to your community. So that's been a huge thing for me, and that shapes my art in a major way.
For those that are not familiar, let's delve a little bit into your practice and what you actually do. So I know you for the murals and printmaking. Could you give me a little bit of a background around the interest in those 2 disciplines or modes of making?
Yeah, I'm a major tutu, and dabbler. I see myself as a Manamoana artist that, when I think our ancestors, they just did what they did. Didn't matter the surface or how they did it. And so I've been lucky enough to do murals and paint. I was really like, oh yeah, stencil work, which the Pavilion mostly is. And then I was really interested in our atua and our gods and stuff, so I was doing kind of tiki stuff. The patterns really started growing on me and doing a lot of pattern work, and then interested in traditional arts, like tatau, and so I'm really interested in those things that connect us to our ancestors. And when you do the things like when you get a traditional tattoo, you're feeling exactly what your ancestors felt in the exact same way. When you do things like drink kava, which is something that's new to me as well, it's that slowing time down, connecting, linking, sharing conversation. I've also had the chance to do traditional voyaging, which is tied to navigation. And so when you're sailing on the ocean on a traditional waka, that's a thing. You're looking literally at the same stars as your ancestors. You're seeing the same waters, and it just takes off the blinders a bit, and connecting to our environment is massive. And then when you look at the patterns, they link you to your environment. When you're drinking kava, you're drinking part of your environment. It's those kind of things. And lately I've been doing hue, which are it's like the calabash, which is one of the oldest plants that's been, and it's considered a canoe plant. So those are the plants that we brought with us on the canoe to places like Aotearoa and spread right across the Pacific. So really interested in that, and I did a show of it. We've been trying to grow it for the last few years, and really been enjoying that process. And all those things, it's those links to community that really excite me. And
so that seems to be the two threads kind of underpinning your work, through and for community, but also exploring Pacific stories of whakapapa and connection to the people around you. Is what you usually explore in the studio, I guess, the same as what you do outdoors? I've seen some of the council projects that you've done, and are the councils usually on board with the types of narratives that you want to share and paint about?
Absolutely. I think, the power of a mural is so underestimated. That's something that we know the power of is, and that's basically what keeps me in that space. It's just when you get a chance to reflect your community back to them, and we're living in a structure of like the last 150 years or whatever. Like you can go to any city and you can find a gray building and you can find the shops on the corner and all that, but when you put a mural into a community that's been like not loved and you paint a wall in it, it brings a lot of light, and it doesn't matter what the topic is as long as it's not too offensive. You're gonna even have old people walk up to you and go, wow, this is great, this is wow, they're shocked by the feeling they get from it, and they see the power of it. I mean, graffiti, we love it for what it is. We love the dirty corners, we love the tags, the throw-ups and all that stuff, but when it gets to that mural part and you get the opportunity to paint in a community, and my work's got a lot of color in it. I really like, Cook Islanders are colorful people, and they're proud of if you go to Raro, you'll see a house that will be like pink with the green around the windows. People are not afraid of color. They're popping it, and my work always reflected that. I really love that part, and so bringing that color to the streets is really fun, and so it's nice to bring a new view. And I think that's why youth are continually, because people could say, graffiti's dying and all this, but there's another generation that comes up and they're still in that 150-year kind of view of the world, and they don't see themselves reflected in it until they get into something like graffiti, and then all of a sudden they have an impact on their community. Some people may think of it as negative, but they're being seen by their peers. They're doing their thing.
It's absolutely about being seen, and I think at the end of the day it's important to contribute to whichever culture you're a part of, right? So as you're operating within the realms of the public, what would be your advice for improving or maybe growing the urban art space within movements like graffiti and murals?
Councils and kind of public spaces are so protective of these spaces, but it all can be fixed with another paint job, so why not loosen the reins off, let some work happen, and if it doesn't fit the narrative in the long run, it can get repainted. And with another mural, and some of our murals, like some people get protective of their murals, rightfully so. They put a lot of work in it, but some of them, they should have a lifespan, because things change, and you want to upgrade with your community. What's the next big thing to come up?
That's a really great idea, and one thing that I'm all for is more programming in the city, so that it gives basically emerging artists, coming into the scene, more opportunities, and also opportunity, I guess, for the image of whatever community to also change and I guess keep things fresh. Do you think that's happening enough in Tamaki?
I think a little bit, but it's a big push. Like we see, like Rosine does, offering walls, and of course it's got the boxes and stuff, but those can easily turn into we will keep the status quo through that. So it does have to have that kind of ground roots, like we think of Avondale, right? And we think, oh, there's some great stuff happening there. But some of the strongest murals there are those black and white ones of colonial kind of narratives, which is, I'm not saying they shouldn't exist, but like literally they're black and white and gray. It's like you're keeping this old mindset around. We're gonna see some of our, having a structured place where, people, where you can say, community, here's where you can paint, and it can be a graph writer, it could be a stencilist, it could be a mom bringing their kids down to have a jam on the wall. That would be, where it's like a good, safe, like big wall, and but being in this city where it's tight because we're in the isthmus, there's not these long lost spaces like you see in other countries where it's like, oh, this whole city has been forgotten about. Why is Detroit so amazing, right? Those kind of places.
That's absolutely true, man, and I couldn't agree with you more. Which communities in particular around Tamaki do you think you have done the most work in?
I've been lucky out west. Avondale's been really kind to me through the Faux Fest. Shout out to them, for the people, and Henderson a bit. Now I live in Orake with my family's and my wife's people, and it's a true honor. So now I'm trying to actually do a little more work in that space. I've done a bit of painting out south.
And coming back to what I've seen on your website, there seems to be a couple of different threads of work I've seen you explore. In particular, could you tell me about the print project called Faux Patutiki?
So patutiki is the Marquesan word for tattoo, and faux is in fake. And so I was trying to think of a way that I could kind of my passion and love for that style of tattooing. And I was so I thought, I'll do a wood block set. I'd figured out a way to make an alphabet out of that style of tattooing, and so I built this alphabet and then printed into like different phrases that I thought were important to make a body work. And that was my first time going, I'm gonna go for funding, do this body of work, and then create this body work out of it and have a show. So that was really my first foray into the public space of going for arts funding. Normally it's just I've got money, I'll do this, because I was really being staunch about I see a lot of people if they don't get their funding, they won't do their work. And I'm and I'm kind of well, I'm gonna do the work no matter what. So, but that was my first time I'm gonna step up and try this process.
And you were saying that you wanted to do more of that style?
Yeah, well, I've done a couple murals with it. Did one out at Te Pūtahi in that letter style, and then I've also got a school in Kelston where I did a big one in that letter style. So I definitely want to explore that more and bring that, because I love the style, and I love that it's an alphabet, so I can write whatever I want.
And what's the inspiration for the text?
The text is kind of bringing the graffiti end with my love for the culture, so it was kind of that mix that I realized, I can build an alphabet out of this. It's got a lot of triangle, it's kind of hard to describe, but if anyone knows the Marquesan tattooing style, they'll get it. And so I made it resemble that, so I could, because it's a lot of large triangles, a lot of blocked out spaces. So I was I can switch it up and build this little. I'd actually drawn a picture for my friend in that style of his name, and I always held that going, I can do more in this space.
Cool. And then another project that I've seen on your website, Savage Club. What is that? Because the images for that look super dope too.
Yes, Savage Club. I've been lucky enough. One of those mutual friends that my wife and I had was Rosanna Raymond, who's a Pacific sister along with Annie O'Neill. So those sisters are a big part of our lives, and we met in Vancouver. I met Rosanna in Vancouver, and that was a kind of a monumental moment. I was just at that time I was working hardscape landscaping, and I had the radio on, and they interviewed this woman who was there about and she was doing a residency at the Vancouver museum. And I was just like, heard her voice, and I was like, holy fuck, who is this person? I need to know this person. And she was doing a workshop that weekend, and it was like Friday, and I like shot home, and I was like, I gotta do this, and I gotta do this workshop. And I went up and met her, and she goes, you know, we met, and I was just like, that longing and that needing, and then to meet someone like her. And I think a lot of people have had that effect from Rosanna, because she's a super inspiring person. And she goes, as soon as you walked in the door, I knew you, because you look like a lot of my bros back home. And I was just like, oh yeah, I got a new big sister, yes. You know, and we hit it off. But she was there, and she was researching the collection at the museum, and this whole collection came basically all from one person. And he was the president of his Savage Club in Vancouver. And so she was like, Savage Club, what's this all about? Basically, it was a gentleman's club, and they were collecting our stuff, thinking that we were a dying race. And so they were trading all this. So there were Savage Clubs like in England, and I think there's still one in Australia running. There's heaps of them in Aotearoa. And so she was like, okay, this is exclusive men's club. And she's like, okay, I'm going to make my own Savage Club with a K. And it's going to be inclusive. And it's going to represent who we really are. And so at that time, she was researching it. And then when she moved back to Aotearoa, which was a couple years after me, and we were all connecting, and she was like, okay, we're going to have a Savage Club meeting, and we're going to do a big thing. And that was kind of her kicking herself off back into her community.
What typically happens in that space?
You know, it's just about redefining. I love the idea. For me, I always talk about this for myself, is that because when I was in Canada, I read the term noble savage, and I was really drawn to it. So I was actually tagging the noble savage for a while, and I was like loving that, and I love the idea of like that came from like the romantic period, and that was romanticizing us. Basically, when they came to our side of the world, they're like, oh, they're the noble savages, you know, like because of the way we acted. You know, we were considered savage, but we had, you know, we were about community, and we were about our loved ones. And, you know, when you read about how we are with our children, you know, those accounts back in the day, you know, like we were considered barbaric and all that. But at that time I was going, yeah, I feel that. I feel like, you know, I've got good manners, I know how to do all this, but sometimes you want to smash somebody over the head, you know, with a club. And so I just love that kind of dual sides of it, you know, and that's where, even in graffiti, you're living like a double life, right? You're living your regular day life, and then you're on the streets, you're doing what some people would just hate you for. So that noble savage term. And then, so coming back to Savage Club and that redefining what it is, you know, even through the taonga that are in museums and stuff, and like those are living things that have been put to sleep by people who found them, stole them, bought them, traded, all that kind of stuff. And then how that activates yourself when you're in relationship with it. So Savage Club always has a strong relationship with a museum, doing, you know, bringing some of those old taonga out, and then mixing in our own taonga with them, and then activating them. Yeah, and it's been a great experience. A tough one at times, you know, because it's a new space, and you get pushback from your own community and from the academics. You know, we've gotten the bombs thrown at us in a few different ways, but we're blessed to continue on sharing that. So I'm really grateful to be a part of that.
That sounds dope. Is there anything online that I can check out?
We've got our own Instagram page. We've got our own, I think it's savageclub.com. Yeah. It's K''LUB for the club.
I'll make sure to check it out.
So basically we create our own club rooms, and we've done one in Australia and in Hawaii, and and just.
Will there be one here in Tamaki?
That's definitely the goal. You know, it's constantly, it's just finding the right people to work with without having to right compromise, because you're always, it's like, it's budget, it's people's, Australia, we did it at in Brisbane, and that was a real big learning curve. The budget was great, but the actions towards us they were scared of us, to be honest, because they were like, okay, if you're no nudity till after 7 p.m. was like one of the rules we got, which was crack up. So we hammed that up a bit, but even they didn't want us walking around in big groups, because we were intimidating the public, and it was stuff like that. And we're like, why did you invite us here if you're just you want like all this stuff, but then you don't want us, the people, you just want to keep putting us in the box and showing what's in the box. It is the crux. So that's it. It's finding people that will trust you and trust that process and know that what we do for ourselves is not to hurt anyone or hurt the establishment, but it is about pushing those boundaries.
Love it. And as part of that process of connecting with your whakapapa, I know that you participated in a really massive voyage called Te Mana or Te Moana.
Yeah, so that was a big voyage that I was lucky enough to jump into.
How old were you when you did that?
Mid-30s. So that came about, I was really interested in traditional navigation and voyaging in itself, because I was just really just curious. And that spark came in that year that I came back, and someone who I was seeing at that time, she said, I really want to do this one day. And I was like, didn't really know much about it. And then on top of it going, you could do it? So that was learning that history of like our voyaging and stuff like that. And then, in 2011, they built 7 canoes. They were built here in Aotearoa. They were funded by a German philanthropist who was trying to protect the ocean, and he saw the canoe as this is the best way to bring this message across to people, because he saw a canoe arrive at a festival in Samoa a few years prior, and he was like, this is it. This is the way to bring, because he really cared about. He saw a white whale, and he was a big diver, and and he's already funding kind of these kind of things, and so he just like, okay, this is the avenue. So they built the 7 canoes with the Cook Islands Voyaging Society and bringing in other voyaging societies, and then it had done half of its trip. They sailed into the Pacific up to Hawaii, and then they went over to the States, down the coast of San Diego, and then they put the canoes to sleep for the holidays so everyone could have a break. And it was really about, it was bringing that message, and on the cultural side, all these voyaging societies wanted to bring a whole new generation into it, and kind of like fast track everyone. So they were thrown in the deep end, learning about navigation, learning about things. Some people had never been on the open ocean before, and it was absolutely a once in a lifetime opportunity. So in that time that I'd met my future wife, this opportunity popped up, and I was like, I'd really like to do it. And she was like, you should. She was like, she understood the importance of that and supported me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. And so I joined that voyage. We flew into San Diego, prepared the canoes. We sailed down Mexico, Cocos Island. No, it's Galapagos. That's it. We got to go to Galapagos Islands, which was like just absolutely mind-blowing, because it's it is that place, and it's just teeming with life. They only live on about 1% of the land there, so, and it's all protected areas. So there's just like swam with iguanas, penguins, you've seen the seals, it's everywhere you look. There's just life. Then after that, it was like the Tahitian group back into Polynesia. Then we went to the Cook Island group, Samoa, Fiji, Vanuatu, and then the end goal was to reach the Festival of Pacific Arts in Solomon Islands. And so that was like it's just like you're just meeting people and experiencing all these things over and over again, and super challenging, but super, like it is that once in a lifetime thing. And the respect and the reverence for the canoe, because that's our creation story.
And what do you think was the greatest challenge on that journey?
Yeah, it's just that not fitting in completely with my crew, because most of them were Cook Island born, and here I am, the outsider, and they were really looking at me like, he's got what it takes, basically, and it you don't gain that until after a few months, because most of them had already done the first half, so they were all like kind of guns. They knew what they were doing. They totally had it locked in, and so they were kind of like the new guy, which you deal with many times in your life. And I'm like, yeah, I know what it takes, because I've done things that I know they'd never done. We went to Mexico. None of them had been to Mexico, but I had. So I was like, at least I understand this. Some of them even, like, not on our canoe, but some of them even got robbed, unfortunately, because there's just some things you don't do. And they're kind people. And when you come up against people that are just like not kind, it's easy to kind of be like, okay,
But how long was the voyage?
It was over a 2-year period. I did half, so I did 8.5 months on the ocean. It was crazy, and it was really hard. It was hard too because you couldn't stop. It was like, okay, the next part, then going to the next island. And so you're always welcomed by the community, and then you're doing work within the community. You're visiting people, but the kindness that people, like I said, the reverence for the canoe, but just that overall kindness. Like you get somewhere and you have to figure out where to go wash your clothes, and you want a fresh shower, and so people are just really sharing that love. And to see, we were 7 canoes of different island nations, and to go to each other's communities and be welcomed and respected. There was 7 canoes together. Yeah, it was, and so that's why it's not like the canoes are around, but in that sense, because of the funding and because we were trying to bring that message of basically, protecting the ocean, right? Seabed mining, acidification of the ocean with the temperature rise, and then also sonar damage in regards to military work, that kind of stuff. So, he was really passionate to fund us to do this voyage, and he saw the importance of, those are just once in a lifetime moments, and you're being out in the middle of the ocean and you can see the canoes off in the distance, the other canoes, because you don't sail close to each other. It's not safe. You kind of like, we'll meet up at the next island, so everyone just kind of breaks out and does their own thing.
That sounds like just such an incredible, once in a lifetime experience. So that's really awesome that you got to participate in that and be involved in it. But I guess coming back to your art, another project that I've seen you do is the Polynesian Panthers mural. Could you tell me a little bit about how you came to be involved in that project that has obviously such a long and rich history in the country?
Tingalau Ness and Chris McBride are still very active, still doing that kind of work. Like the original Panthers are still doing the work that is needed to be done. Luckily they've inspired a whole bunch of new people, and they saw the power. They went to they have a strong affiliation with the original Panthers in America, and they went over there and visited, and they saw in their communities they have a strong mural presence, and so they were like, "Oh, we need to get on this. We need to get, this is a great way to kind of." And the 50th anniversary is coming up for the existence of the Polynesian Panthers, and so they grabbed a team of us together. They picked me, including 3 other artists, and so it was a co-design with Chris and Tingi Lau overseeing it, and they kind of found the funding through Auckland Arts Festival, so it kind of tied into that, which is it's great with someone like Chris. Yeah, they're thinking of alternate ways to create this work and tell this story. Oh, thank you. And it is one of my proudest works, because it's not about me. I'm just lucky to be on this project, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity. And I miss that about graffiti. Like, there was a lot of messaging that would come out, that you can put things on the street through that way that kind of keeps you safe. You think of like war countries, and their graffiti is sometimes where the messaging comes out, and so to be a part of that, and be welcomed into that, history, because when I came and visited, and I never knew about the Polynesian Panthers, and it blew my mind at that time. And then to actually be going, yeah, I'm sharing in the mana of that hard work that they put in, and that storyline, that means so much to, and then you find out, oh, my friend's uncle was one of the Panthers, and and all that, and that's what's great about this stuff, is it brings those stories out, and people, because there was a lot of shame, now it's a proud moment, and there's even like TV and that kind of stories coming out about it, but to allow people to tell that real tragic part of history and bring it, and now we can go, but now it's a plus.
I guess that's the transformative nature of murals and what they can do to unearth stories in the public realm, right? And especially bring that kind of to the spotlight for discussion. So are there any other projects that you've really enjoyed working on for whatever reason?
Yeah, I'm lucky because of my affiliation with my wife's iwi. I get some opportunities to paint from that, because my goal is to help change that, where I'm not part of that, where I'm helping other younger parts of our family whānau to tell those stories. But they've given me great opportunities, where I even got to design one of a park in Mount Rouse School. So stuff like that. I mean, Savage Club, that first club room in Brisbane was massive, and there was 2 weeks of me painting that space and filling it, and I'd never done anything that big in my life. It was like almost killed me, but those challenges are exciting too. Yeah, so I'm really more interested in that. Like when you were young, you're just about getting your own name up, but to tell a story that reflects the community, that's massive for me. I've just mentioned a few of the people that have supported me, so it's to kind of pay it forward. Like, I'm feeling a bit old, and it's like, but if I can help springboard some kids in my community, and DLT and them, they were doing workshops back in the day, and that reflected a lot on Charles, and and that's just like, you see that kind of whakapapa. It's like, if those little projects, if those little touches didn't happen, where would we be, collectively? And like, DLT's giving me love, someone who he just met, and he's kind of like, hey, we'll catch up, and he understood that. So I'm always appreciative of that, and I want to be that for when I can, for the right ones.
Yeah, that's super dope. And I guess living in Tamaki at the moment, what's been the greatest challenge for you operating as an artist?
The greatest challenge is my mind. Is just trying to find my place. You have your ups and downs with work. Like, it's either flush, you got too much of it, or you got nothing. Like, everybody wants this project next week, and then you get all that down, and then what's the next one? So it's more where I'm at, dealing with I'm lucky because my wife built her whole career before I came along. So she's got her own business. She's doing a lot of that, so that takes a lot of pressure off me. So I can be more of a stay-at-home dad. But that means, just gotta get that laundry done, make sure the dishwasher's loaded, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's just juggling that, and I'm grateful because I got a good partner that's down for that. For me, not having a community that I grew up in is really, really difficult. That's why it's always that social thing. I got uprooted when I was young, and I moved here. I'm lucky I still got my boys from when I grew up, but I can't go out in the city and bump into some old friends from school or an old work job. I don't have that, and I noticed that's a little like a bit sad spot for me, where I see it with my wife, and I see it with my friends, and it's like, I don't have that sense of community, but I've been blessed to build a community in the time that I have been here.
And tying back to the pavilion that you've painted, you've done an incredible job. Could you give me a little more detail around the research that you discovered to conceptualize this design?
I was thinking, I don't really know too much about the area, even though I was based at Corbin's. You can always learn more. I was thinking of it as a place, like a meeting place, because that's what Panuku is. It's the two streams that meet there, and that was the waterway that leads out to the Waitemata, which is basically the motorways before there was any streets, right? Like, it was all the waterways. So I read up on the history there, and reading about Parekura and panuku, and he was chasing his love through the bush, and she was pulling off feathers off her kakahu for him to follow, these white feathers. So I painted a few white feathers on there, feeling like, oh, that's a good, the trail to the space. And even hopefully before that space ends, I'm gonna try and like get some of my friends to come meet me over there and like have a kava session, sit in that space, because when it was at Three Guys, it didn't feel like very approachable, but now where it's sitting is a great space for families to actually meet and hang out. That's it. It's like you've created this space for us artists, and try to take that again and make it into another space where if I could actually get people to come and meet at one time there and talk about those stories and show those links. It's got Pacific patterns on it, and it's just like, that's my reflection of myself in that space, that you've created that space for us as well.
Thanks, bro. I mean, it's a huge privilege to be able to create a platform for people to share their artwork and respond to the Opanuku stream. But yeah, I think I've kept you here long enough now, so in closing, are there any shout outs that you'd like to make?
Ooh, yeah, Pacific Sisters, Rosanna, Annie and them. I'd like to shout out to some of my old crew, Raul, Forever Fresh, TWK, Fabulous Lecture Funk Brothers, FEFB, Curly, YIA, Wise, all my boys that I used to paint with back in the day, and Krokanani. Just grateful for all those people that support me.
Alright, man. Thanks so much, Numa, for such an enriching conversation about your background, connections to Pacific culture, and various projects that you've contributed to in the community. I'm super excited to see what you do next, and really look forward to seeing more studio work and stuff you do outdoors. And to our audience, if you've managed to sit through the entire video, we hope that was insightful and you learned a little something about Numa. Thanks again to Eke Panuku for funding this project and really just continuing to enable public art to be accessible for the community. We really hope that by providing the Pavilion as a platform for artists to showcase their work, it can really help to enrich some of the spaces in the community. So thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Pavilion Project.